I never thought I'd find myself telling a story like this, but, well, here we are. I've lived in Oakwood Heights for almost 5 years now. It's your typical suburban neighborhood. Neatly trimmed lawns, uniform houses painted in muted tones, all following the same carefully crafted HOA aesthetic guidelines. And honestly, that was fine by me. I knew exactly what I was signing up for when I moved in. What I didn't sign up for was Barbara Thompson, or as everyone here not so affectionately calls her, Barbzilla. Barbara has ruled the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association with a titanium fist for the last 3 years. She's in her mid-50s, always overdressed like she's en route to a royal tea party, with her blonde hair yanked back so tightly it's probably doubled as a facelift. Her favorite hobby: marching around the neighborhood with a clipboard, gleefully recording every minor violation she can find. I'd mostly managed to stay out of her line of fire, until recently. Few weeks ago, I injured my back pretty badly. Slipped on a puddle in the kitchen and ended up with a herniated disc that required surgery. Recovery has been long and painful. My doctor arranged for a visiting nurse to help with physical therapy and wound care 3 times a week. That's where things went south. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah, my nurse, arrived for her usual visit. She's incredible, kind, professional, and clearly knows her stuff. She always parks in my driveway and stays for about an hour. That day I was mid-exercise, sweaty, in pain and grumpy, when the doorbell started ringing like it owed someone money. Whoever was out there was determined to break the button. I hobbled to the door, aching from my therapy session, and there she was. Barbara, clipboard in hand, scowl locked in, the kind of expression that could spoil milk. "Excuse me," she said in a tone that sounded anything but excusing. "There's an unauthorized vehicle in your driveway." And blinked. "That's my nurse's car. She's here helping me recover from back surgery." Barbara's eyebrows shot so far up, I thought they might leap off her face. Well, according to HOA Regulation 7.4.2, no commercial vehicles are allowed to be parked in residential driveways during daylight hours. I took a breath, trying to keep calm. "Barbara, it's not a commercial vehicle. It's her personal car. She's a healthcare worker, providing essential care." Her lips curled into a triumphant little smirk. "It has a logo on the door. That makes it commercial. She needs to move it immediately, or you'll be fined $100 per day." At that moment, Sarah appeared behind me, concern in her voice. "Is everything okay?" Before I could answer, Barbara wheeled on her like a hawk spotting a mouse. "You need to move your vehicle right now. You're in violation of our HOA rules." Sarah, cool as ever, smiled politely. "I'm in the middle of a medical session. I'll be done in about 30 minutes and then I'll be on my way." Barbara's face turned a blotchy shade of red. "I don't care what you're doing. Rules are rules. Move it now or I'm calling a tow truck." That was my limit. "Barbara, please be reasonable. Sarah's providing medical care. She'll be gone soon." "Reasonable?" she practically screeched. "I am being reasonable. The rules apply to everyone. No exceptions." I tried explaining there actually were exceptions in the bylaws for medical care providers. I checked before arranging home visits, but she wasn't hearing it. With a huff, she spun on her heel and stomped off the porch, already dialing her phone. Sarah looked at me, clearly concerned. "Should I move the car? I don't want to cause trouble." "No," I told her firmly. "You're a healthcare professional. You're legally allowed to be here. Let's just continue." We went back inside, though the tension lingered. About 15 minutes later I heard it, the grinding beep 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 of a tow truck reversing up my driveway. Could not believe it. Wincing, I rushed outside as best I could with my recovering back. Sure enough, a bulky guy was already hooking up Sarah's car. And there stood Barbara, arms crossed, a smug little smile plastered on her face. "Stop!" I called out, trying not to collapse in pain. "You can't tow that vehicle. It belongs to a nurse who's currently inside providing medical care." The tow truck driver looked between me and Barbara, clearly unsure. "Lady said it's an unauthorized commercial vehicle," he shrugged. "It's my nurse's car," I snapped, trying to hold myself upright. I tried to keep my voice steady, even as my frustration simmered just below the surface. She's inside right now helping me recover from back surgery, I told the tow truck driver. Check the HOA bylaws. Section 12.3 specifically says that vehicles belonging to healthcare workers providing in-home care are exempt from parking restrictions. Barbara let out a dramatic scoff. That's absurd. There's no such exemption. But I was ready for this. I'd printed the relevant section of the bylaws after my surgery, fully expecting Barbara to make an issue out of it sooner or later. I asked the tow truck driver to hang tight while I slowly made my way back inside and returned with the paperwork. He read it carefully, then nodded. Yep, says right here. Medical professionals are exempt while providing care. He started unhooking Sarah's car. Sorry for the trouble, man. Barbara practically lunged forward and snatched the paper from his hands, her eyes scanning the page with increasing fury. This must be outdated, she snapped, her voice climbing an octave. I never approved this exemption. It was approved before you became president, Barbara, I said, keeping my tone as even as I could. It's been part of the bylaws for years. The tow truck driver, now clearly uncomfortable, climbed back into his truck. Look, I can't tow a car that's legally parked according to your own rules. Call the company again if things change. And with that he drove off. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. So very wrong. Barbara stood there fuming, her face twisted in rage as she watched the tow truck disappear. This isn't over, she hissed before stomping down the sidewalk. I went back inside, emotionally exhausted from the encounter. Sarah, ever the professional, looked concerned but continued with my therapy. Don't worry about it, I told her. She's all bark and no bite. Oh, how naive I was. When Sarah returned 2 days later for my next session, Barbara was waiting. She'd set up a lawn chair across the street from my house like she was settling in for a live drama. The second Sarah pulled into the driveway, Barbara popped up from her chair, clipboard in hand, and marched over. I opened the door before she could ring the bell, hoping to avoid another circus. Barbara, we've already been through this. Sarah's allowed to park here while providing medical care. But Barbara didn't even look at me. Her eyes were locked on Sarah. I reviewed the bylaws again, she said with a smug little smile. While healthcare workers are exempt from the commercial vehicle restriction, they're not exempt from the 45-minute visitor parking time limit. Your sessions last an hour. That's a violation. I blinked, genuinely stunned. You're seriously going to nitpick over 15 minutes. This is medical care, Barbara. Rules are rules, she said, her new favorite mantra. 15 minutes over is still a violation. Sarah, bless her, kept her composure. Mrs. Thompson, I understand your concern, but cutting my sessions short could delay my patient's recovery. He needs the full hour. Not my problem, Barbara snapped. Either you finish in 45 minutes or your car gets towed. She held up her phone. I have the tow company on speed dial now. I was about to argue when Sarah gently touched my arm. Let's go inside and begin, she said softly. Getting upset isn't good for your recovery. She was right. So, reluctantly, I followed her back in, but I couldn't focus. I knew Barbara was still outside, watching, waiting. Exactly 40 minutes into the session, the doorbell rang again. When I opened the door, there she was, Barbara, tapping her watch like a smug game show host. 5 minutes left, she announced cheerfully. That's when I snapped, just a little. Barbara, this is harassment, I said, barely keeping my voice steady. You're interfering with medical care. That could be illegal. Her eyes widened for a split second, then narrowed again. Don't threaten me. I'm just enforcing the rules everyone agreed to. I'm not threatening you. I'm informing you, I replied. If Sarah's forced to cut my therapy short and my recovery suffers, that's medical interference. She didn't respond. She just turned and walked off. But she didn't leave. She went back to her chair across the street and continued her creepy little stakeout. When Sarah's session ran the full hour, as it needed to, Barbara was instantly back at my door, phone in hand. "That's it," she said, triumphant. "The tow truck is on its way. And you'll be fined for this violation." That's when Sarah stepped forward. "Mrs. Thompson," she said calmly, "I need to inform you that interfering with prescribed medical treatment can carry serious legal consequences. I've documented this interaction and the previous one in my patient's medical record." Barbara hesitated, her confidence wavering for just a second, but then she straightened. "You can't intimidate me with empty threats. I know my rights as HOA president." What Barbara didn't know was that Sarah had, in fact, documented everything. With my permission, she'd taken photos of Barbara's little sidewalk stakeout and recorded audio of our prior interactions. After the first incident, she'd reported the situation to her supervisor, who immediately looped in the healthcare company's legal department. So when the tow truck showed up again, Sarah calmly stepped outside and approached the driver with confidence. She showed him her credentials, the relevant HOA bylaw section, and a formal letter from her company's legal team. "Interfering with my ability to provide care could be considered a criminal offense in this state," Sarah calmly informed the tow truck driver. That was all it took. He wisely backed off and refused to tow the car. Without another word, he drove away. Barbara, meanwhile, looked like she might combust on the spot. "This is outrageous," she shrieked. "You can't just ignore the rules because you think you're special." "Actually, Barbara," I said, finally reaching my limit, "there's this thing called medical necessity. It overrides HOA parking regulations. Maybe consult a lawyer before continuing your crusade." "Fine," she snapped. "If that's how you want to play it, I will." For the next few days, things were blissfully quiet. I hoped Barbara had finally accepted reality, or at least realized she was skating on dangerously thin legal ice. But Monday arrived, along with another scheduled visit from Sarah. And with it came Barbara's full-blown escalation. This time she brought backup. 2 other HOA board members stood with her across the street as Sarah pulled into my driveway. And before Sarah could even reach my front door, Barbara marched over and physically blocked her path. "You are trespassing on HOA property," she declared loudly, even though we were very clearly on my private property. "You need to leave immediately." Sarah, remaining professional, tried to step around her. "Ma'am, I'm here to provide medical care to my patient. Please step aside." That's when Barbara did the unthinkable. She put her hands on Sarah's shoulders and pushed her back. "I said you're not welcome here during business hours. Leave now." I had been watching from my window and immediately grabbed my phone. 911, what's your emergency?" "I need to report an assault," I said. "The president of my HOA just physically shoved my healthcare nurse and is preventing her from entering my home to provide medical care." The dispatcher assured me officers were en route. Meanwhile, Sarah had wisely stepped back and was recording the incident on her phone. The 2 board members who had come along were now visibly uncomfortable and quickly distanced themselves from Barbara and her actions. "Barbara!" I shouted from the doorway. "The police are on their way. You just physically assaulted a healthcare worker and are interfering with medical care. I strongly suggest you leave my property." "The police?" she stammered, her face going pale. "That's ridiculous. I'm enforcing HOA rules. You can't call the police for that." "I didn't call them for that," I corrected. "I called because you laid hands on someone. That's assault, Barbara. Your HOA badge doesn't give you the right to put your hands on people." She turned to the other board members for support, but they were already speed-walking back to their homes, wanting no part of the mess she'd created. Now alone, Barbara's confidence finally began to crack. "I was just doing my job," she said weakly, her voice losing its bite. When the officers arrived minutes later, both Sarah and I gave full statements, and we had video evidence to back every word. Sarah had captured the entire interaction on camera. The officers remained professional, but it was clear they were unimpressed with Barbara's behavior. "Ma'am," one of them said, addressing Barbara, "do you understand that interfering with a medical care provider is a serious offense? And physical contact, regardless of the circumstances, is assault. Barbara's face, once red with fury, was now pale and slack with disbelief. "But I'm the HOA president," she muttered, like it was supposed to shield her from consequences. "You may be," the officer replied evenly. "But that title doesn't give you the authority to physically block or touch anyone, especially someone providing medical care." Then came the part one honestly didn't expect, but absolutely savored. The officer turned to her. "Barbara Thompson, you are under arrest for simple assault and for interfering with medical care, which is a separate offense in this state." Her eyes widened. "This is outrageous," she shouted as they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs. "Do you know how much I've done for this community? I was just enforcing the rules." But it was too late. Reality had caught up with her. Barbara was charged with simple assault, a misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in jail, and interfering with medical care, a Class E felony that carries up to 6 years in prison and fines of up to $3,000. Though she was released on bail, the judge issued a restraining order barring her from coming within 50 feet of either Sarah or myself. An emergency HOA meeting was called the following week. Barbara showed up, looking nothing like her usual polished self. Her hair was limp, her clothes rumpled, and the smug expression she always wore had been replaced with something close to panic. When the board unanimously voted to remove her as HOA president for conduct unbecoming of a community representative, her face crumbled. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, voice cracking. "This is my community. Built it. I protected it." But when the gavel came down confirming her removal, her expression said it all. Barbara's reign of terror was finally over.